Please give a warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Dom Flemons.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Annie, and thank you for all your wonderful service at Farm, and thank you, Ellen, as well, and congratulations on the new position here at Farm, and thank you all for coming out. Well, my name's Dom Flemons. I'm known as the American Songster, and when I'm traveling around, I tell people about what a songster is. A songster is a musician who sings and plays a variety of material, and I always tell them every night that that's what I'm going to be doing for them. And my show, instead of trying to really break into a deep delve into my own psyche, I've used my shows and my platform as a way to open up pathways and doorways into traditional music, in addition to playing my own music. Of course, it's all about playing the music that you put together, but you know, as a folk musician, that's what sets us apart from every other genre. Is we talk about the folk, the people, the community. And then also when you bring those traditional styles, as my old friend Mike Seeger used to say, styles is one of the key parts of folk music as well. Teaching people regional styles, the differences between those styles, and replicating them in some type of way, just so that other people can hear them. Because at certain times when you get out there in the world, you'll find that people haven't been exposed to certain types of folk music, and sometimes for over 100 years in certain communities. And so that's something that each of us can individually take away from every time we get a chance to interact with an audience. Like for me, you know, in recent years, there's been a lot of talk about the African-American contributions to country and Western music. And, you know, having performed on the circle at the Grand Ole Opry since 2008 with the Carolina Chocolate Drops, I can definitely tell you there's been a lot of progress made. There's more that needs to be made, but there also needs to be an acknowledgement of the progress that has been made. Just to tell you a little bit about my first time performing on the Grand Ole Opry, I was at Merle Fest in Wilkesboro, North Carolina, 2007 with the Carolina Chocolate Drops. And afterward, I was approached by George Hamilton IV backstage, and he told me he wanted to invite us onto the Opry stage. A year or two later, then we got to do it. And when we performed there, I got to meet two other old-time members of the Grand Ole Opry who really were very encouraging. There was first little Jimmy Dickens. Now, when he heard some of that string band music coming out of the dressing room, he jumped over and he started cutting the buck right on the floor and said, "My God, I love y'all. I'm from the hills of West Virginia and I love string band music." And that meant that we were playing something that he recognized, for one, and then he also wanted to acknowledge us being there. And that was one thing beautiful about the Opry, is that they didn't really talk about the fact that we were an African-American string band. They loved the fact that we were bringing the old-time music that they needed on the Opry at that time. And then another fellow I met who I sadly enough, I didn't know his work before meeting him, but I would sit down. See, when you go to the Opry, there are little church pews in the back that you can sit on to wait for your turn to go on. And this little old man would always be sitting in the corner, and he'd look over at me and say, "You know, son, I'm from Louisiana. And I want to tell you one thing. The black people and the white people knew each other. They loved each other. And I want you to know that, young man. Just so you know that." And he told me this must have been a dozen different times, because I don't know. Every time he made a point to tell me, and that fellow was Jimmy C. Newman, the Cajun cowboy. And so just in those few moments, I was able to get a full education into country and Western music, and that I could be accepted into it. And so nowadays when I play on the Opry, I always start off with this number here, because it's a little harmonica instrumental I put together. And this is one that I picked up from a recording of Eck Robertson. This is one called "There's a Brown-Skinned Girl Down the Road Somewhere." I thought was a cute title. And then also had a beautiful little ragtime melody. And when I began to learn about D. Ford Bailey, it was actually before I left Arizona. I picked up a copy of the Tennessee Folklore Society's CD, Country Music's First Black Star, and I got to hear a little bit of D. Ford Bailey playing not only the harmonica but the banjo and the guitar, and it moved me, you know. And I noticed he had certain pieces like, for example, you know, the Fox Chase. Phew. Phew. Ah. Phew. And I had heard a little bit of harmonica before, but there was no harmonica like that. One other little piece that D. Ford really moved me on was one that you find was adapted by a lot of different early African-American string band musicians, the Old Hen Cackle. Of course, this was a universal number that a lot of people played, a little show tune on the fiddle. And again, since I never learned how to play the fiddle, I always wanted to get that sort of awe that goes over an audience when you play the fiddle. And D. Ford Bailey found a way to adapt the Old Hen Cackle in a certain way. I'll play it for you right now just to kind of give you a sense of this. Because, of course, one of the things that is so beautiful with traditional music is that it's familiar and the sounds can resonate with an audience. And that kind of gives you a little bit of time to be objective as a performer in a certain way, because you get to feel out the audience. What things do they want to listen to? What things don't they want to listen to? And so a little bit of the Old Hen Cackle, this is another one they like on the Opry. So taking a few of those techniques, I put together this arrangement of There's a Brown-Skinned Girl Down the Road Somewhere, and this is one they've come to know me to play at the Opry now. And so usually when they have me step into the circle, just with a harmonica, I'm able to play a little bit of this one here. And I will mention too, just since we are in a keynote setting, when arranging this one, I'm going to do one straight version in the fiddle style, and then I'm going to do a bluesy version on the second time around. And in doing that, I'm going to incorporate a couple of different showman techniques that are a part of the busking harmonica tradition. So I'm just going to mention that in passing, because it may come off a little funny at times, but there's a reason for doing these things. Thank you so much. Because one of the things I found in a lot of cases is that music can really unify people. The first time I ever went to the Mount Airy Fiddlers Convention, everybody told me, because I was over at the old time camps, and now if you've never been to the Mount Airy Fiddlers Convention, it's split up in two sort of sections. Up toward the hill, so you have to imagine a hill that kind of loops upward. So toward the top of the hill, the old time musicians are in tents and in small camps. And as you go farther down toward the gate, you then have the RVs where the bluegrassers are all sitting. So all the people at the tents where I was hanging out, they said, don't go down to the RVs. They may not want you to go down there. And having played a lot of harmonica with a lot of bluegrass groups, I wasn't worried about that. And so I could walk in, and because I could play tastefully with those jams, people asked me to stay around for a little bit longer, and everybody was shocked. Oh my gosh, how did he get down to the RVs? And there's a certain magic to music that always brings people together in that way. One other thing I was able to, I kind of end out a lot of my shows with that harmonica instrumental, so in some ways I'm going backwards from my normal program. In the course of the program, one medley that seems to come up a whole bunch that a lot of people are moved by is this little medley I call the Piedmont Picker's Choice. And I spent about 10 years living in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, in the Piedmont, North Carolina. And one of the things I got to do there was I got to expand my vocabulary and knowledge of Carolina Piedmont picking, that beautiful syncopated thumb-led finger-picking style. I had first fallen in love with the music of Elizabeth Cotten when I was out in Arizona, and I tried my best. Now you have to imagine this is before YouTube, so I tried my best to play just like her until I found a video of her, and then I found that would be impossible since she played it upside down. But I tried my best anyway to get that beautiful feel, because a lot of Piedmont picking, one of the things about the feel is that it can be played fast, but it never seems like it's in a hurry, and that's one of the things that's very distinctive about the style. And so at one point I started to feel nostalgic for North Carolina, and I was trying to think of a way to evoke a little bit of those lessons. Not just from Elizabeth Cotten, because of course I didn't get a chance to meet her. She had passed away before I had a chance. And Etta Baker, I'll play a little bit of her music. I missed her by one weekend, if you can believe that. And Leslie Riddle, I got to have an appreciation for his music through my good friend Mike Seeger, who passed me a lot of those early recordings that he did with Leslie in the mid-1960s, talking about the Carter family. And in putting these numbers together, I actually got a message from someone at one point. They said that they had heard me on the radio, and they said that somewhere in the middle of one of the tunes, it ended up being this one here, they said they had to pull over and take a second just to take in the music and to meditate on the sound. And I thought that was so beautiful that someone actually took the time to write me a message about it. And again, this sort of style, it's almost its own type of folk chamber music, even though it wouldn't be as highfalutin to call itself that. And I'm going to play you a little bit of a well-known number that everybody knows, Freight Train from Elizabeth Cotten. Play a little bit of Railroad Bill, keep that train theme going, and then finish out with the Cannonball Blues just to get a little more train happening. And one of the ways I'll surprise you with it, I found to try to bridge some of the gap between the generations, I found a little way to do that I'll see if everybody catches on, because we're a folk singing people, and that's one of the things that's beautiful about folk music. We're a singing crowd, so hopefully you'll sing when the time's right. But for now, let me go ahead and play a little bit of this. I'll start with Freight Train. I'll do a couple of embellishments, I know Andy Cohen's in the audience, so I'm going to try to do my best. And I'm going to selectively play, just like Andy taught me, with the thumb and the forefinger for the first two rounds of Freight Train. Then I'm going to slip to the more common two fingers and the thumb, like Mississippi John Hurt, for some of the other stuff. So just in a side note there. That's solid gone, solid gone. Now I see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd tonight, but I see a lot of new faces in the crowd too. I was wondering if everybody could sing a verse on this one here. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. Freight train. Freight train, run so fast. Freight train, run so fast. Please don't tell them what train I'm on. They won't know what route I've gone. Oh yeah, give yourselves a hand on that. It sounded really good. Like I said, I know you're singing, people. Thank you so much. One of the things that's so important about playing that medley for me is it gets me thinking back on all the times that I had to go down to a lot of wonderful musicians' houses. I mentioned Mike Seeger before, but going down to John D. Holman's house in Durham, North Carolina, a place where, oh yeah, fans of John D. Now, you know, in his neighborhood, John D. was known as the guy who fixed the lawnmowers, you see, so people didn't really know that he was a musician in his own local community. Not most of the time. They knew he played, but, you know, it was something that was much more casual when it came to that type of music making. And so being able to go to his house and get to absorb some of those lessons. Aljamae Hinton's another person. I went out to Middlesex, North Carolina, and I'd go down to her juke joint and learned a little bit of her material. And Boo Hanks, who was a fellow I got to travel with for quite a bit of time, from Buffalo Junction, Virginia. And each of these players had their own individual style of syncopating the bass notes, and they had a lot of nuances and subtleties to each of their playing. And that's something that I try to take with me whenever I'm doing the Piedmont style. One song I was able to take a few of the lessons I learned and turn it into a newer song was a song I did for my album Black Cowboys. Now I had read the autobiography of a black cowboy by the name of Nat Love, and I was so moved by this story that I had to write a song about this gentleman. There were no songs associated with him. And he wrote his own autobiography in 1907, and he was born into slavery in Davison County, Tennessee, and after emancipation he became a cowboy for the better part of 25 years. And then after a while, he tried to defeat the train, and in a very colorful story mentioned in the book, he tries to rope a train, actually, and tear it down, and the train tore him down pretty well, and he realized, as the best cowboy in the West, he got defeated by the train, so he decided to join the train. He became a Pullman porter working on the railroad line, traveling from here to Kankakee, going all the way to Salina, Colorado, and Denver, and all over the United States. And one of the things that he mentioned at the end of his book, which I ended up printing in the Black Cowboys liner notes, was this here. It has always seemed strange to me that so many Americans rush off to Europe and foreign countries each year in search of health and pleasure, or to climb the Alps in Switzerland, and to view the scenery of the old world, when our own North America, the New World, offers so many opportunities to study Dame Nature in all her phases. And I always say to the traveling American, see America. How many of you have done so? I have seen a large part of America and am still seeing it, but the life of 100 years would be all too short to see our country, America. I love thee, sweet land of liberty, home of the brave and the free. And And there's something to that little phrase when you know that Amtrak still uses the phrase "See America" to this day. That tells you a little bit about the deep cultural history that they're reaching into, whether sometimes they're conscious or unconscious about it. But in thinking about Nat Love's story, I was blown away that someone just as familiar with the horse and buggy was just as familiar with the modern innovation of the train in his day. And then also location-wise, he did a lot of his cowboy work in a town in northern Arizona called Holbrook. And it resonated with me because my grandfather, my father's father, was a preacher out in Holbrook, decades after Nat Love. But to see that little desert town show some historical precedence instead of the physical journey that I had to go on with my grandfather and my father to go out there, that was something that was very beautiful for me to see in a book and see it in the pages of history. And so, thinking about all those things, I tried to think of a way that a lot of the Piedmont style of blues tends to shrink all these very big stories into little elliptical phrases. And so I wrote this little one about generational progress. This is one called Steel Pony Blues. I caught my steel pony, and boys, I'm gonna ride. And I incorporate aspects of, everything from Elizabeth Cotton to Frank Stokes to Robert Wilkins, a little bit of everything in here to throw it all into one composition. So here's a little bit of Steel Pony Blues. When you get down to Holbrook, you won't find me there. Good Lord, I caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. Caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. 'Cause I caught my steel pony and boys, I'm gonna ride. I'm getting far too old to follow this here herd. Good Lord, I caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. Caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. 'Cause I caught my steel pony and boys, I'm gonna ride. Kick it one time, 6. Now they call me Mr. Flemons, 'cause I'm a pull porter now. Good Lord, I caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. Caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. 'Cause I caught my steel pony and boys, I'm going to ride. Go ahead and get it one time, 6. Take them on down the trail. Call me Mr. Flemons, 'cause I done tore that guitar down. Good Lord, I caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. Now when you get over there, you won't find me, 'cause I caught my steel pony and boys, I'm gonna ride. Get it one more time, 6. One of the things I wanted to evoke in that song was the sense that time still moves on and things still evolve and transition. That's why there's the line about, I'm getting far too old to follow this here herd. We're now caught in an area in society where life has evolved in such a way with the implementation of so much technology, brand new ideas, brand new things, bigger and greater and broader access to all sorts of areas of life and information are available to us. I was feeling at one point that it would be too hard to try to follow all of it, because it at one point felt like you could jump past technology and know everything, but it's impossible to do that nowadays. And I started to begin to notice that the appreciation of different types of music began to scatter as well. Not so much that people got less interested in music, but taste became broader. And in some types of ways, I found that in trying to write songs out there, I've tried to put little evocative messages out there for people to think about. Like recently, I ended up writing a song that I wrote in the midst of a hurricane. I was in the midst of Hurricane Ida. Actually, it was on the road. And I was traveling from Arkansas, heading out to Nashville, Tennessee. And I found that there was this, I don't watch a lot of TV, so there was this huge storm that hit us on the highway. Knew it was something different than usual, because all the air in Arkansas smelled like seawater, so I knew it was a big one. And, weather has followed me for quite a few years as I've traveled. With every traveling musician, weather follows you wherever you go. Even in moving up to the Midwestern area, that movement began when actually I was, of all things, performing on the Grand Ole Opry. I made my way over to Lexington, Kentucky, and then all of a sudden a huge tornado came in and just blasted through Nashville. But I was in Lexington, Kentucky at that time, so I was unaffected by the hurricane, or the tornado. Then I decided to start making my way back up to the Midwest from Lexington, and I started to hear about the pandemic. And I was supposed to be out in Austin, Texas for South by Southwest, and so I canceled my flights. 2 days later, everything was shut down. I was living in Washington, D.C. at that time, and so my main gigs outside of just regular touring gigs were Alzheimer's and dementia patient programs at rest homes, private schools for kids in Maryland, and then also working with the American History Museum at the Smithsonian. And all three of those went away all at one time. And so that'll stress you out, especially when you got a family you got to think about. And again, with musicians, it's not a problem of having money in your hand, but it's a matter of, will that money be there months down the road, So you have to anticipate a lot of different things. And part of what we decided to do was to cluster up with our family, and so that was one of the things that brought me to the area here. And it's been a wonderful time. I've been enjoying it, but there's always a little stress in the background. And when I was there at Hurricane Ida last fall, in the midst of this horrible storm, I ended up writing this little song about it's somewhat about anxiety, but the weather sometimes can sort of feel your mood and sort of project it into your mind as it's happening. And that's kind of what the hurricane did for me on this one. And this is one called Traveling Wildfire. Even actually, as I went to record this song, I was driving out to Los Angeles. I was about around New Mexico. And as I was riding down the highway, I saw a big fire just blazing across the highway. Nondescript buildings being eaten up by this fire, and just not knowing what to do. And of course, when you're on the highway and you're not in the middle of it, you have to keep on moving. But just, again, it doesn't help with the anxiety. There's a traveling wildfire sprawling like an endless gravel road. You can see it tearing up the mountainside. It goes where it wants to go. And my eyes cry looking at the flames, orange to yellow, burning to white. For there's a traveling wildfire blazing into the valley tonight. There's a dark moon in the valley, covered in clouds made of clay. And the winds roll in scowling voice, will make the Mississippi change its way. And I can hear a simple moaning, a lonesome tune to cry. For there's a dark moon in the valley, rising high up, rising high. The dark moon is beaming like a flicker of candlelight. And when you think the night is over, folks remind you that times are getting tight. There are too many voices to get us out of the maze. For the dark moon is beaming like a final melody being played. And I spend my time looking for a place soft and warm. Oh my love, oh my love, how did we end up in the eye of the storm? Thank you so much, everybody. And folks, I'll end out on just one last little bit, just a recent event that happened to me that again gave me a whole new perspective on trying to build community. I got this random call from Yo-Yo Ma. That was the first thing that happened. Exactly. Yeah, that's what I got. That's what I'm saying. It came down the line. Hey, Yo-Yo Ma wants to do something with you. I said, yeah. I want to do something with Yo-Yo Ma. Let's go ahead. And what was beautiful is he invited myself and Kathy Matea out to a small retreat in West Virginia at the New River Basin. And one of the things that that happened was I happened to get this new banjo here made by Jeffrey Menzies in my hands. This is a tackhead banjo, mid-19th century model. Of course, on the back I've got the little Sankofa birds. The proverb of Sankofa continues to go with me everywhere I go. And they asked me if I wanted to put together a little tune to play with Yo-Yo. I said, yeah. And I think back on 2005 when I went to the Black Banjo Gathering at Appalachian State University, and I got to see a wonderful documentary film called Banjo Man about the great Uncle Homer Walker from West Virginia. And so I decided to put together a little piece for the Yo-Yo and I to play. That's sort of in Uncle Homer's style. You know, of course, had to put a couple of embellishments of my own in there. And it was a beautiful time to be able to stand out on the New River Basin and be able to just take in the atmosphere and the water, the forest, the trees, and to be able to just sort of sit in that peaceful, tranquil environment and just take it in. And we ended up playing a little bit of this number here. And so in the spirit of everything that's folk music, I will end out my keynote address with a bit of the banjo, just like so many of our great leaders in the folk community have used many times. And I think back, of course, 2014, the year of the folk singer. In January, we lost Pete Seeger. And we still need more people to fill the shoes of Pete Seeger. That is not just writing our own songs, but also to sing the old songs and sing the old traditions of folk music, whatever they might be. It's a brand new world. Let's build a new world. And like Pete, I'll send you on the wings of banjo here, and thank you all so much for having me again. Here's to many more years of us getting together in person, and let's have a wonderful farm. Thank y'all so much.
All right, Dom Flemons, everyone. Such a treat.